Hey guys, welcome to the video. Salt here. Today we're going to be going over the new Prime Warframe, Lavos Prime. Let's head into our cave here. We have the top commenter of the last video, Flare the Ninja 8718. The first commenter of the last video, Loris Gesualdi 7363. And our recent supporters of Nice Bear, Colonel Suro 6, and Alfofo. Thank you so much for your support. And of course, we're doing Lavos Prime today. I'm going to go ahead and go down into the arsenal here. Now, before we go over Lavos Prime's build, I want to go over his abilities for people that aren't fully aware of them yet. Now, like usual, I'll have timestamps, and so if you already know the abilities or you don't really care about them, you could always skip ahead, and that's okay. So we've enlisted the help of Other Salt. He's out in the simulacrum right now to show off these abilities. I'm going to go ahead and switch to him right now. Here we go. Hey guys, Other Salt here. We're going to be going over Lavos Prime's abilities. I'm going to start by talking about his passive, which is actually pretty extensive when it comes to passives. So the first thing about it is that energy and universal orbs give status immunity for 10 seconds. And then the next thing about it is that you can imbue the next ability cast with a element, one of the basic element types. And it's because Lavos' 1, 2, 3, and 4 are each a different basic element type. The 1 is a toxic, the 2 is cold, the 3 is electric, and the 4 is heat. And so the 4 that is normally heat, if I was to hold 1 here, you see that in the bottom right now, it looks like it's toxic. And if I press 4, which is normally a heat ability, it's going to do heat and toxic. And let me go ahead and make viral. So I'm going to hold the 1 to make toxic. I'm going to hold the 2 to add cold, which is going to make viral, which means that the next thing cast is going to provide its element that it normally does plus viral. So let's do the 3, which normally does electric, and we'll see electric and viral. And on these enemies, you see electric and viral. The other thing about Lavos in general is that all of his abilities are on cooldowns rather than being energy to cast. So that is something that's very unique to Lavos there. Okay, now we can finally go over his abilities here. We're going to go over his 1 first, which is Ophidian Bite. I hope I'm saying that right. You're going to deal toxic damage in a 100-degree cone. This opens enemies up to finishers and heals Lavos per enemy hit. And this is on an 8-second cooldown. So let's go ahead and do that right here. This is the toxic ability for the 1. Okay, now let's do the 2, which is Vial Rush. You're going to slide forward at 30 meters a second. While sliding, launch vials to the sides, leaving a pool that deals cold damage and lingers for X seconds. At the end of the charge, or if ended early by jumping, emit a cold explosion. And this is a 5-second cooldown. Let's go ahead and do this here. And you can kind of steer it a little bit if you use your movement keys. It's a little bit hard to steer. You can also end it early by jumping, like I said. So I can go like this and jump, and it'll kind of end a bit early. And again, this is the 2, so this is the cold ability that Lavos has. Okay, let's go over the 3. Is Transmutation Probe. Launch a device that travels forward 15 meters per second, lasting 3 seconds, and emits electric damage. For each enemy electrocuted, 1.5 seconds is removed from Lavos' other ability cooldowns. Standard pickups like health, energy, and ammo that are touched by this device will turn into universal orbs and universal ammo pickups. Universal orbs will give both health and energy, and universal ammo pickups will give ammo for all of your equipped weapons. And this has a 10-second cooldown. Let's go ahead and show this here. So this is the one that does electric damage. You can also kind of stop it in place if you just press the button again. Let me wait for the cooldown to finish there, and I'll cast it again, and I'll try to have it stop like right in the middle here. There we go. Now, only 1 enemy per cast can reduce the cooldown. They can get multiple electric procs, but only 1 enemy cast hit by electric is going to reduce the cooldown. So you can't just like have it linger here and expect that it's going to, reduce the cooldown by multiple times per dude hit. Or per same dude hit, I should say. Okay, now let's go over the 4, which is going to be Catalyze. You're going to launch 9 probes in a circle around Lavos. These probes spray heat damage and status. Damage is increased by 100% for each unique element on the enemy. Physical element types and special element types like microwave, the lifted status, things like that, are not included in the increased damage. And this has a 30-second cooldown. So let's go ahead and show this here. This is going to be the heat ability. This is the 4. And again, that will do more damage is if these guys already had a lot of unique statuses on them. And now we're actually going to be subsuming over the 2 Vile Rush with Roar. I'm not going to show Roar. I would have to switch to my main build there. But Roar is just a multiplicative damage increase that's both going to affect the damage of your abilities and the damage of your weapon. So Roar is what we're going to be using as a subsume. So that should be everything there. I'm going to go ahead and wave to Salt so he knows we're done. Wow, great job, Other Salt. Great job. Okay, let's head into the arsenal here and into our build. Okay, so 2 things that Other Salt didn't mention is that Lavos Prime efficiency and duration actually affect him slightly differently than other Warframes. So duration actually affects status duration on Lavos Prime, and efficiency actually affects the 3 and its cooldown reduction. Now, Lavos Prime actually has a lot of great subsumes that he can use, and they all will change his playstyle a little bit depending on what subsume you pick. The cool thing about it, though, is that it doesn't really change the build. The build pretty much will stay the same. It's just the subsume that changes. So if you want more of a nuke-heavy Lavos that's a little bit more stationary, so not as mobile, you're kind of staying in one spot, could be really good for like survival missions where you can stay in one spot a lot, then a grouping subsume is really good instead of the Roar that we're picking here. So maybe something like Korra's Ensnare, I think it's called. Another good grouping or another good nuking subsume would be Sickening Pulse, and then you would use your pet Nautilus to group for you. So that could be another good nuking build for Lavos Prime. Another good setup for Lavos Prime would be as a melee Warframe using Wrathful Advance as your subsume, and specifically using the Harmony melee weapon, because the Harmony can condense dots into one big source of damage. Now, our setup is actually going to be using Roar, and we're still going to be a nuke, but we're going to be more mobile. You know, we're not really staying in one place all the time. So this is going to be a better build for more mobile play. So things like Cascade, things like Disruption, it's still going to remain good in things like Survival. So it's still a nuke build, but it's going to be more mobile, less stationary. Okay, let's continue on our build here. So we have the 3 Umbral mods: Umbral Vitality, Umbral Fiber, and Umbral Intensify. This is going to give us health, armor, and ability strength. Now, for a damage reduction, for a health and armor damage reduction build, what you're looking for it to scale the best into Steel Path is a minimum of 2,000 health and 2,000 armor. And thanks to Lavos Prime's very high base health and armor, with just the triple Umbral set, we actually get to 2,200 health, and we get to almost 2,000 armor. And if you just use the Unairu Focus School, you can be at over 2,000 armor. And I mean, honestly, even if you didn't have the Unairu Focus School fully unlocked yet, this is still about good enough right here. Okay. So then we have Archon Continuity. This is going to give us plus 55% ability duration. Remember, duration is really good for status duration on Lavos Prime. This also converts, or I shouldn't say converts, but toxic status effects will also apply a corrosive status effect. It's really nice. It helps with some partial armor stripping. We're going to have Overextended for plus 90% ability range. This is going to be important for our nuke of Catalyze. Transient Fortitude for ability strength. Then we're going to have 2 augments here. We have Valence Formation. This is a passive augment where casting an ability imbued with extra element damage applies that element as a 200% bonus to your weapons with guaranteed status for 20 seconds. So whatever you imbue your ability with is going to also give you that on your weapon. So one of the things I like to do is I like to cast my Catalyze with gas, and so it'll turn my weapon that I'm using into also producing gas. So Valence Formation is really good for our particular type of Lavos Prime, which is kind of like a semi-nuke, semi-gun frame. Swift Bite is the next augment we're using, which is going to be an augment for Ophidian Bite. This is going to reduce ability cooldowns by 4 seconds when at least 4 enemies are hit. And Ophidian Bite is granted plus 30% additional ability range. So Ophidian Bite turns into more of a utility tool. Whenever you see a big group of enemies in front of you, you just cast your one, you get some value on them, and you get a 4-second reduction in cooldown of your other abilities. In the aura slot here, we're going to go for Corrosive Projection. Enemies lose minus 18% armor. This combos pretty nicely with just some random corrosive procs we're also going to be getting. So a lot of the enemies, they might not be fully stripped, but they'll have a lot of little partial strips on them. So they're going to be significantly weakened with the corrosive procs you get just randomly and through Corrosive Projection. In the Exile slot, we're going to be going for Cunning Drift. This is going to give us plus 15% ability range, again, to further help overextended with our nuke range. And in the Arcanes, we're going to be going for Molt Augmented, all stacked up. This is going to be plus 60% ability strength. And Arcane Bellicose, all stacked up. This is going to be plus 54% ability strength. Something really cool about Bellicose, and I thought I wasn't going to get the 9th stack of it, because if you look, my health is 240 at the end. And this says for every 250 max health, you get 6% ability strength. So I didn't think I was going to get the 9th stack of this, but I guess this rounds up because I do get the 9th stack of it. So even though I'm at 2,240, it counts it as 2,250, which is kind of cool. So altogether with Augmented and Bellicose, you get 114, I think it is, 114% ability strength, which is really nice. So that's how you build out the Lavos Prime. I'm going to go out here. Let's go over some externals you can add to Lavos Prime to make him even better. We'll go over the Archon Shards first. Now, none of these are absolutely needed. These are just things that I like to put on him. But, you know, it's up to you. You can do your own thing, or you can kind of copy my Archon Shards. Now, the first thing I like is I like 1 shard for casting speed. A lot of people like 2 shards for casting speed, though, and that's completely valid because Lavos Prime's 4, his nuke of Catalyze, actually has kind of a long casting animation. So I think 1 is good enough, but 2 is fine too. If you like 2, that's also completely fine. The other thing I like is I have 2 shards for ability strength, and I have 2 shards for ability duration. So those are just things that I like. They're not really needed, but so you can kind of mix and match as you like there. Another thing people like to do on Lavos Prime is they like to go for Emerald Shards to increase the stacks of corrosive so that they can fully strip. That's really nice, especially if you're going to go for a full nuking Lavos where you're using more of a grouping tool. For our build, I think it's less needed, but it's an option. It remains an option. Okay, so those are the shards there. For the primary weapon, I personally like the Kuva Ogress. So Lavos Prime, you press a lot of buttons on Lavos Prime because not only are you casting abilities, but you keep pressing your buttons to have to mix your elements. So that way your next ability cast has those elements imbued on them. So you're pressing a lot of buttons on Lavos for his abilities, and you don't actually have a lot of time to aim in very nicely and get a lot of value at like headshots and stuff. And so I think the best weapons to use on Lavos are weapons that you can just quickly fire and get a lot of value with them. So big, heavy weapons. Now, personally, I like the Kuva Ogress because it has an augment for it called Nightwatch Napalm. Rockets disperse napalm, inflicting 30% damage over 6 seconds across 90% of the explosion area. So the Ogress, basically, when you shoot it, it just creates this field that sits there for a few seconds. So I can just quickly shoot this. It's a big AoE. It does some big AoE damage. Plus it sits there for a long time. So you get a lot of value without really having to, you know, do super intense aiming or anything like that. But it doesn't have to be the Ogress. I think any big weapon that you get a lot of value per shot is good for Lavos Prime. In the secondary slot, I like the Azima. So I have an energy generator Azima build. I'll show it here. It's going to look a little bit confusing. I have a whole video about the energy, or I shouldn't say energy generator, sorry, overguard generating Azima. I have a whole video out about it. So if you want to look at it into more detail, you can look at that video. But this is going to passively generate overguard. We're a damage reduction build, but you know, little overguard procs here and there are still going to help us stay alive. We don't need it, but it's just going to further help our survivability. So I like using the Azima. That's just a little utility option. In the melee slot, now I'm not personally going for a melee Lavos, but if you did go for a melee Lavos, oh my goodness, the harmony would be so good because it has this really specific trait here where heavy attacks condense all of the dots into like one damage instance. And oh my goodness, that'd be so good on Lavos. So if you're interested in making a melee Lavos, you know, consider using the harmony. And again, with the subsume, you'd probably be looking at Wrathful Advance, Kalervo's Wrathful Advance as a subsume. In the focus school, and of course, you know, if you weren't going to go for a melee Lavos, you could pretty much use whatever melee you want here. Maybe you want to go with the Praetos for more maneuverability, like, you know, better parkour speed. It's really up to you. It's kind of free at that point to use whatever you want in the melee slot. For a focus school, I like Unairu, and it's because for a proper damage reduction build, you really are wanting to hit the 2000 mark, like minimum. So 2000 health, 2000 armor. If you look here, we're damn near close to 2000 armor. We're not really there. If you want to be super anal and actually hit that 2000 mark, then Unairu would technically get you there. Unairu has just a big dumb passive on Stone Skin that just gives you 200 armor. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to switch to your operator. You just always get it as long as you have it unlocked. So I think Unairu is pretty good because of that. Now for the pet, I personally believe that the Mechanical Hound is going to be your best option. He's the best ranged status spreader in the game. There is 2 pets that spread status better in melee range, and that's going to be Nautilus and Dirija. Dirija and Nautilus are the best melee status spreaders. So if you were going to go for more of a melee Lavos, consider Dirija or Nautilus. But for a ranged focus Lavos, it can't really get much better than the Mechanical Hound. He is crazy at spreading statuses. Again, I have a whole video on the Mechanical Hound. I'll show his little build here. Of course, on Lavos, you probably don't need Mystic Bond. But in general, this is the general Hound build. Using Synergized Prospectus mixed with Manifold Bond, he just kind of shoots out this little orb that bounces around, and it applies all of the statuses that you have on his weapon. And so if we look at his weapon here, you basically just load his weapon up with a bunch of different statuses. So, you know, we have one mod now that gives you radiation in one slot. We have a mod now that gives you magnetic in one slot. And then you use a combined element and then a single element. So we're going for viral here and electric. But you can come up with any kind of combo you like. I like the viral and electric combo, but maybe you like something different. And so that Synergized Prospectus with Manifold Bond will apply all of these statuses here, which is really nice. Again, that is going to combo with Lavos Prime's 4 that does more damage when it hits dudes that already have unique statuses on them. Oops, sorry about that. So that is Lavos Prime. That is his externals. That's how to build him. I'm going to show it off in about 5 minutes of gameplay just to kind of show you guys the general gameplay style of our Lavos Prime here. So I'll just queue up like a 5-minute Steel Path Mott on solo.
Their rage is vehement.
Now, there's really 2 ways you can kind of think about your nuke. You can either imbue it. So your nuke already does heat damage, but if you imbue it with heat damage before you do it, you'll actually get 2 heat procs. And so, you know, you'll get more damage out of it. Or you can imbue it with gas, which is what I like to do, and have gas and heat. I think both of those are really good options. I personally am going to kind of lean to doing the gas every time I do my nuke before, but you might want to imbue it with more heat, and that's fine too. The 1 you're just going to cast anytime you see a big group of enemies in front of you. That way you get some value out of it, get some reduced cooldown on your abilities. The 3, pretty much the same thing. Anytime you see a big group of enemies in front of you, you just cast your 3 at them to get more cooldown reduction. And then the 2 is just a buff you keep up all the time. And your nuke, you just press it anytime you have it available. Just make sure you imbue it beforehand. Either imbue it with fire by holding 4 itself and then pressing 4 to cast it, or you imbue it with gas by holding 1, holding 4, and then pressing 4. Okay, let's go ahead and start this here. So I'm going to cast Roar. I'm going to go ahead and get my gas ready here. I'm going to cast my nuke. I'm going to cast a 3, maybe get some value here. Cast this, get some value. Throw some ogre shots out. Get some value out of those. They're going to be sitting there. Let's go ahead and imbue with gas. Let's get this gas nuke out. Staggered myself. That's okay. Prime Surefoot is always an option in the Exilus. So let's get imbued with gas. Let's get our 3 out. Try to get some value with our 1. Get some ogre shots out here. Nuke's ready. Shaboop. Get some ogre shots here. You're probably going to have a harder time finding the groups of enemies because you're going to be killing them so quickly. Actually, they're up here, like up behind this wall here. It's kind of a crappy tile set, to be honest. Get our ogre shots out. And Nightwalk Napalm will basically just sit there for like 6 seconds to do a crap load of damage. Let's get our nuke. Shaboop. Let's get our 3 to reduce cooldowns. Try to find a big group of dudes to get our 1 value there. So he's pretty busy as far as button presses go. That's why, like, you don't really want to go for like a super intensive headshot build on a weapon with Lavos. Because you're going to be pretty busy pressing your buttons. Ooh, that's a lot of value right there. A nuke. Make sure I keep my roar up here. Group of enemies up here. Let's get our 1. Shaboop. Got that. Let's get our 3. That should give us enough cooldown to cast our nuke again. Let's press our nuke. Maybe get some ogre shots towards the points of entry. Cast our 1. I don't think that was enough to reduce our cooldowns. That's okay. Kind of a crappy tile set here, though, because it's a 2-floor tile set. Let's make sure we're imbuing with gas. Go ahead and cast our nuke there. I think there's a bunch of enemies up here. Let's cast our 3 up here. Shaboop. Make sure we have a roar up. All right, nuke's ready. Go ahead and cast it. Nuke is ready. Let's find where the group of enemies. They're kind of up top. Let's make sure we cast it up here this time. There we go. Throw our 3 out that way. Make sure we're imbuing the next thing cast. Another nuke out. I think everyone's up on the top floor again. Maybe throw some ogre shots that way. Good 3 there. We have the Acolyte coming. Misery. It's no problem.
Look at them. They come to this place when they know they are not sure.
You know, another good primary for Lavos is actually his own primary, the Ceto Prime. That's another really good primary for him. You need some more survivability. You can just pop out some of Zima turrets. and they'll get you some overguard. Look at me, I'm generating overguard already. Don't really need it in this like low of steel path, but later on in steel path would be really useful. So we're almost at 5 minutes here, but that's pretty much the general gameplay. A lot of button presses. Nothing is like super crucial though. You don't have to be like super anal about like getting them exactly on time. I mean, I guess for maximum value you can, but so I mean, other than a lot of button presses, he's pretty fun to play. So, okay, let's head to Extraction. I think you guys got the general gist of Lavos. You're pressing your 1 and your 3 anytime you see a big group of enemies. That way you can get some cooldown value. You're pressing your 2 just to keep it up because that's just your multiplicative buff. And then you're pressing your 4 anytime you... anytime it's up, anytime it's available, you press your 4. But before you press your 4, you make sure you imbue it with either fire by holding your 4 or gas by holding your 1 and then your 4, or your 4 and then your 1. I guess it doesn't matter. So that is Lavos Prime. That's how to build him. That's how to play him. I hope you guys liked it. If you liked it, consider giving it a like. If you haven't subbed yet, consider subbing or tell me what I can do to earn your sub. And I hope you guys have an amazing day. All right. Bye.